Welcome, Thrivers, to our High Thrive Live. I'm Heather Choate, international mindset expert, here with Marc Johnston, international marriage expert. And my heart is just so full of gratitude today. I hope that everyone in the US at least, had a wonderful and a safe 4th of July. For us, honestly, it was a little strange because there's fires everywhere here. So we had no fireworks. It felt like just a weird Saturday. So I hope that yours was better. Marc, was yours better than mine?
Oh yeah, 4th of July for me and my family, it's always a big event. We go to this town nearby and they have this huge festival and there's bands playing and it's a huge thing. But it was a lot of, we got rained on for like a good couple hours, but we stuck around. It was great.
Yeah, we just had like smoke and dust blowing in our faces. So anyway, I hope that your 4th of July, all of you Thrivers, was really wonderful with your families. I also know that sometimes when you're having struggle in your relationship and there's tension in your marriage, that holidays like that can be very challenging as well. So I wrote a post on that earlier in the group about an opportunity to start to turn things around so that your next holiday, you're not going through the same thing, so that you can truly enjoy these special moments with your family. So today we're talking about what to do when your spouse says they don't love you anymore. We've had several people in the group comment about going through that very thing within the last couple of weeks. So we wanted to touch on this, and it's something that Marc and I encounter once in a while. And we want to talk about what this really means when your spouse says this to you and what it doesn't mean, because there's a big trap kind of in these words. And so we're going to go into what it means and what it doesn't mean. And then what do you do when your spouse says, I don't love you, or if they say, I never really loved you, right? So Marc, what does that really mean if your spouse says, I don't love you anymore, I never really loved you? What does it mean and what doesn't it mean?
Well, I think even those two statements are very different, so I'm going to take them a little bit separately. First off, when your husband or wife comes, you say, I don't love you anymore. There's a lot of things going on there. This is obviously not something that's just come up all of a sudden. This is very, very likely something that your husband or wife has been thinking about for a long time. They've been building it up in their mind. They've been waiting for this moment to share that with you. It's a big event. And so, with this sort of thing, it's not like, even though it might, I hear from some people when I talk to them, they say, okay, all of a sudden my husband or wife just said that. A couple of weeks ago we were doing fine, and then now they're saying this. And that's just not how it goes. It's just, in my experience, there tends to be some sort of big event and then tends to devolve from there, or there might just be a slow decline. But it is absolutely not a sudden event. And for you to approach it with that in mind is just not the right way to go about things. You need to really figure out what's going on there first. Now, the other statement, that I've never loved you, I see that a lot as well. And I think by and large, I think 99% of the time, it's just a completely false statement. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that because, most people, they don't get married to others that at least don't have some amount of attraction to themselves. So why do you hear that statement? Once again, it's the same sort of reason that your husband or wife, they've been thinking about this for a long time. They might have when I hear a statement like that, to me, it's saying that they're gearing towards separation or divorce. They're trying to convince themselves of why they should be doing that. Essentially, the way people work with making decisions, especially hard decisions like this, just the process of it, they tend to look for, once they've made that decision, they tend to have some amount of confirmation bias. They're saying, okay, I've made this decision. They're looking for all the reasons why it was a good decision. So they're saying, okay, I'm going to leave you because I've never loved you at all. It's always been horrible. It's always been this terrible marriage. And, whenever I hear, stories of a husband or wife saying that thing, I also get their spouse saying, but we had all these good experiences, we had all these good times. It just doesn't sound right. And it's because it isn't. Like I said, it's that husband or wife trying to make the decision of leaving easier. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you have ever heard that, is this resonating? Like, is this making sense to those watching? Go ahead and, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up if this is coming in, giving you some ahas here. So if that has happened to you and your spouse says, I never loved you, that can be very painful. But like Marc said, you have to understand it's more of a justification on their part, because go back to when you were dating, right? And you were engaged and you were first married, it was true. But the trap here is that we can start to question and doubt all of those things. And like, maybe they never really did love me. Maybe it was all false, right? And then you start to wonder if the entire marriage is just, built on a sandy foundation. So what can you, what should people do in that kind of situation when you're on the receiving end of that and mindset starts to go there of that maybe this was never even real? What can give you, what would you recommend to give people clarity on how to know what is real and what isn't real when your spouse might be saying something, but it doesn't feel like that was what was true to you?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Well, one thing that you said there I think is really important is that when someone hears something like this, it's going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this
it's
is what?
It's often meant to. It's often meant to hurt.
Meant to hurt. It's sometimes. And my concern with these sort of situations is how you're going to react with that hurt. And a lot of times, by the time people talk to me, they've said, okay, I reacted really poorly with things like this, and either they act in desperation or they act in anger, they act in sadness, and it tends to push an already precarious situation over the edge. And that's just not going to help. When I'll tell you, a reaction like that, while it's understandable, is still very much a focus on yourself. Like, how does this hurt me? Why, this affects me so much, and I'm so hurt, and I'm so angry, and I'm so upset. And here, your husband or wife, they've said something monumental. And there's so much more to be said behind that statement, that if you then shift the focus on how upset and angry or sad you are to hear something like that, you've missed a window of opportunity. Not to say that you couldn't go back to that window, but it's the window here is finding out what your husband or wife means and asking them some questions, and why are they so unhappy, and what's going on. You'll get a lot further just trying to understand all that there is behind a statement like that, rather than reacting out, really being fueled by all those strong emotions and going off of that.
Right. It brings to mind, like, I have had many toddlers, and I have a few now, and I know you do too, Marc, and many others do here. But the toddler will say something just completely outrageous, that I wish you were never born, Mom, and if I were to immediately react to that at like the surface level of the emotion of that, then that's just going to feed into that fire, right? That's one of the big shifts that Marc and I teach is, are you reacting to fire with fire? Because you can't fight fire with fire. We've got all these fires going on here in Colorado. It's like if I went out and started dumping gasoline everywhere. But at the same time, we are humans and we are emotional. So we're not saying you have to be robotic. And there's oftentimes, like Marc mentioned at the beginning, this might seem like a really sudden news to you. The reality is, if your partner's saying, I don't love you anymore, this has been going on for a long time. However, it's just coming to your attention now in those exact words. And so when your partner surprises you with something monumental, like Marc mentioned, you have to have a system in place and how to handle those emotions and how to move forward in an effective manner. And if you're not in the right state to address it right then, there is no reason and there's no law that says you have to respond right away. So one of the biggest things we teach is to give it some space and some time if you need it, and then you can come back to it. The window of opportunity Marc mentioned isn't like within like 3 minutes after they have said those words to you. It's the next time that you interact with them. So there are, like I mentioned, like you have to have some tools and resources, a system in place on how to kind of process through your emotions and decide what you really, really want. And that is one of the most important, crucial things. And it's totally transformed my life personally, because I used to be an instant reactor, fighting the fire with fire. And that only made things worse, to learning how to process emotions and get to a more centered place so that we can move forward in a productive manner. Does that make sense to everyone? It's really important. That's one of the most crucial things. Otherwise, we're just like a bunch of toddlers that are just in adult bodies. Yeah. So,
no,
Marc.
I like that analogy there, and it's just the analogy of like the dealing with the toddler, because like you're saying, it's something that's very, very present in my life at the moment. But yeah, if so I'm thinking about my 2-year-old right here, and she just explodes sometimes, and if I just go off of her tantrums and get upset with her, I've had to learn that it doesn't really go anywhere. And just like that, in our marriage, if I react poorly to, my wife being emotional, it's not going to go anywhere productive. And it's really much better to focus in on, okay, what is wanted, what's needed in this situation. I think same here. The best direction that you can go once your husband or wife has said that they don't love you anymore is, okay, so what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you want? How can we make this into a productive situation?
Absolutely. So one thing that I really encourage clients that we work with is finding a way to process through those emotions, having that game plan in place to kind of deal with some of those things, because it's not that you can't feel them or express them. Well, express them, that's a little bit different, but feel them and process through them rather than staying stuck there and acting from that place. So a big takeaway is, if your spouse does something that's very painful like this, saying, I don't love you anymore, then you need to have a plan and an operating system that will get you through kind of that emotional pain, so that then you can apply what Marc's talking about here, of showing that understanding and meeting their needs, and then being able to move forward. So those are the kind of the 3 big shifts that you have to have there, is what am I going to do with all this pain? Because if I just launch it back at my partner, nothing productive is going to happen, but I can't just keep it all to myself. So what do I do about that? Right. And then deciding, where do we want to go and how can I understand my partner, and working together as a team to move forward in a productive way.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts on this, Marc? And if anyone has any questions, go ahead and leave a comment.
So just a final thought is, a statement like this, many people might consider that the kind of a last nail in the coffin for a marriage. Like that's the end. And it doesn't really have to be. Even the spouse that is saying that, I've seen many situations where that's not necessarily what they mean. They don't necessarily mean, okay, now it's over. But there's still lots to do there. The big overall thought here is, very likely they're making a statement like this because they've lost any amount of hope that things could be different or could be better. And if you can restore that hope, there's a lot that can happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we got a comment here. If you keep the pain bottled up too long, it comes out later and what feels like a groundswell. I'm not good at keeping it in because of this. I tried to let it roll off my back, but it's hard. Absolutely. So having a system in place and how to process through those emotions will get you to that place where it doesn't feel so hard. You don't get stuck there. It is painful and you're able to feel that pain fully and then let it go. And that is an incredible power that is within all of us to truly do that. So yeah, very good. Well, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate this. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I just honor every member of this group and all of those that are striving to have a thriving marriage, because, you know, I posted earlier that if you keep doing the same things in your marriage, you're going to keep getting the same results. So you have to learn how to do some different things to get some different results. And once you learn how to do some different things, your marriage can be in a completely different place. And it's really beautiful to see that. So we appreciate you all, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.